airstrike by Ethiopian National Defense Forces in a residential area in Dessie on Sunday kills 13 civilians and injures 50 more. Good evening. I'm Salam Berhana with your news for the evening, and now for the details. Dessie, a highly populated town in southern Wollo, was hit by an airstrike on Sunday, November 7th, 2021. The town of Dessie was captured by Tigray's armed forces on October 31st, and communications and other essential services discontinued shortly after. The airstrike hit near a residential area, killing 13 civilians and injuring 50 more. Abiy Ahmed and his associates had repeatedly made statements reproaching the town's residents for their support to Tigray's armed forces. Abraha Gabratinsaye has more.
In his recent speech that briefed the situation, which followed the decisive victory of the Tigray forces at South Wollo, capturing the strategic towns of Dessie and Kompolicha, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has accused residents of Dessie town conspiring against the Ethiopian National Defense Force and supporting the Tigray forces.
ደሴ ላይ ለምሳሌ አንዲት ሬጂመንት ኮማንዶን የተዋጋው ኃይል ደሴ ነዋሪ ነው። ትናንትና የመከላከያ ደጋፊ የነበረ ኃይል ቲፒኤልኤፍ እየቀረበ ሲመጣ ሬጂመንቷ እንዳትወጣ ከቦ መስዋዕትነት ከፍሎ እኮ ነው ሊያስቀር የሞከረው እዛ የነበረ ኃይል ነው።
Weeks later, the regime has resented the civilian residents and attacked them with aerial bombardments on November 7, 2021. Survivors of the airstrike give their harrowing testimonies as follows.
Two of our relatives have died over there. Many unidentified bodies were picked up from the streets and got buried. Someone helped to get out of the wrecks of the first attack. Then I tried to flee towards the forests to escape from further attacks as the military jet bombarded 3 times.
This happened on us, innocent civilians who do not know anything. The bodies of our relatives were scattered over there. My sisters, cousins, and others who have done nothing wrong have been targeted.
Mrs. Zinabu Ali is a resident of Dessie who survived the bombardment miraculously with severe injuries. She managed to speak about the situation despite the agony of her injury and the death of her family members.
I lost my mom.
ወይዘሮ ዝናቡ ዓሊ ድማ ኣዲያ ሓፍታን ሰባይ ሓፍታን በተደዳብ ክሞትዋን ከለው ንባዕላ እውን ግዳይ መውሰልቲ ኮይናላ።
We didn't think the military jet would hurt us when it flew over us, but it dropped bombs 2 times on our compound and in our living room. I managed to go out and find my mom. I found her in the other room, and we gathered and sat there. The jet dropped another bomb on our second room. It killed my mom, my sister, and her husband. My sister is called Samira Andres. She was 22 years old and a mother of newborn baby. She died in the airstrike, and her husband was also killed on the street. My sister and her husband came from Kopo. They came here to save their lives. They got killed here.
Abiy Ahmed Ali is accustomed to responding to his defeat by Tigrayan forces on the ground through aerial bombardments on civilian residences and public as well as religious institutions. It's our fresh memory that he perpetrated aerial bombardments on Maqala city more than 6 times, killing and wounding dozens of civilians and destroying public and private properties.
On September 17th, 2021, the American government had issued an executive order that would authorize government bodies to take measures against actors that contributed to prolonging the conflict in Ethiopia. Now, the U.S. Department of Treasury has placed sanctions on 4 Eritrean entities and 2 individuals that have contributed to prolonging the conflict and their involvement in the gross violation of human rights. Aragawi Gabra Mikael has the details.
In an executive order issued on Friday, November 12, 2021, the Office of Foreign Assets, control under the U.S. Department of the Treasury sanctioned 4 Eritrean entities and 2 individuals for their involvement in expanding military conflict and a growing humanitarian and human rights crisis. After condemning the role of Eritrean government for its role in the crisis in Ethiopia, the director of the Office of Foreign Assets Control, Andre M. Gaki, stated that her office will continue to expose and take measures on the actors who prolong the crisis.
We condemn the continued role played by Eritrean actors who are contributing to the violence in northern Ethiopia, which has undermined the stability and integrity of the state and resulted in a humanitarian disaster. Treasury will continue to use all our tools and authorities to target and expose those whose actions prolong the crisis in the region, where hundreds of thousands are suffering. Parties to the conflict must come to the negotiation table without preconditions. The United States stands ready to pursue additional actions, including against the government of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, if there is not tangible progress toward a cessation of hostilities.
The 4 Eritrean entities designated by the U.S. Department of Treasury are the Eritrean Defense Force, the ruling party in Eritrea, the People's Front for Democracy and Justice, a civil society organization called Hedri Trust, and Red Sea Trading Corporation. It also designated Abraha Kasa, Chief of Eritrea Security Office, and Hagos Gabrihewot, the Executive Officer of Red Sea Trading Corporation. The report by U.S. Department of Treasury recognized the role of Eritrean forces throughout the conflict in Ethiopia and especially their involvement in gross violation of human rights, including looting and sexual assaults. The holding company of all PFDJ Business Enterprises, Hedri Trust, established on 1994 by the PFDJ, was designated for becoming an instrument of political subdivisions of the Eritrean government. Red Sea Trading Corporation, which was owned by Hagos Gabrihewot, was designated for assisting and sponsoring with financial and technological support for the war in Ethiopia. According to the sanction, all properties and interests that are in US and owned by the sanctioned individuals and entities are blocked and must be reported to the Office of Foreign Assets Control.
Education has been discontinued for nearly 2 years now. It was initially discontinued due to concerns regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, later followed by the outbreak of conflict. Many schools in Tigray have been looted or vandalized after being used as military camps or repurposed as IDPs, leaving into question IDP camps, leaving into question the fate of over 1.4 million students in Tigray in question. Mekelle University recently released a statement opposing the discontinuation of the university's budgets and its programs by the Ministry of Education. Abel Tsagabu reports.
Mekelle University released a statement condemning the use of education as a weapon of war by the Ethiopian government. The statement says that the Ethiopian government has the duty to provide education to its citizens, but has instead used its deprivation as a weapon of war. The statement says that during the occupation of Mekelle by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the university's infrastructures were destroyed and looted, university campsites were used as military camps, female students were raped, and many university employees forced to leave the camps due to security concerns. The statement also says that the university was not able to carry on with its programs despite the withdrawal of Ethiopian forces because the Ministry of Education had ordered for the university to discontinue education for 1 semester despite opposition from both staff members and students. The statement also suggests that the university's budget has been cut and that its staff have been left without salary for the last 5 months. The university condemned the Ministry of Education for attempting to reassign students and staff members to other universities, especially in light of the fact that attempts to reassign students and teachers ignores the circumstances of Tigrayan students and teachers that are living under a blockade. The university called upon the global academic community to do their part to avert the closure of the university and to ensure the right of access to education to the students in Tigray.
Our last news was reported by Sabloark. Human Rights Watch released a statement condemning the siege on Tigray that has suspended all humanitarian and medical assistance into the region, which has directly affected the health and well-being of survivors of gender-based violence. Human Rights Watch stated that victims ranging from age 6 to 80 are unable to get medical assistance due to the systematic destruction of health facilities and blockade of roads. Human Rights Watch stated that survivors may have contracted sexually transmitted diseases or maybe carrying an unwanted pregnancy. But the current situation is making it impossible for them to recover from their trauma, emphasizing that the victims are suffering both mentally and physically. In the months-long occupation of Tigray by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, private and public properties were looted and destroyed. Tigray is a town in the Garalta district of eastern Tigray, just one of many affected, suffering from the humanitarian crisis in Tigray. Abel Tsagabu has more.
The 8-month-long occupation of Tigray by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces was marked by the systematic attack on food stocks and crops, livestock, and denial of basic food aid coming into Tigray. The defeat of occupying forces by Tigray's armed forces was followed by an almost 5-month-long siege on Tigray that has made it impossible for Tigray's food system to revive, leading to even more devastation. Tekentaka is a resident of the town of Tsigereda, Garalta district. Her and her family are just one of the many that find themselves in a devastating situation.
They
have no sympathy, not even for a blind woman like me. They took everything I earned when I was healthy. They took my jewelry. They took everything. I'm saying that we have nothing to eat or to drink. I'm saying that they took most of my clothes. They took my silver jewelries. I had gold earrings. They took everything. It was the Eritrean troops that did it. There's hunger here, but I have nowhere to go. I don't know what to do. I'm just waiting to die. There is nobody that can help me because everyone is in need of assistance for himself.
Kidan Gabriel Mikhail is another resident of Tsigereda. She said the Eritrean troops came and raided their village and that her and her family lost everything.
Every property we had was either looted or destroyed. My house is found on the main road, so they just kept coming and going. They have done everything they wanted to do here. We have not been able to receive any aid because it's being obstructed. What can we do for one another? Nothing. We are all poor now. Everyone is in a crisis.
Bariu Bahailu is a government authority in the district. He says the people in Tsigereda are starving primarily due to the raid by Eritrean forces.
They broke the farmers' tools, and they would sometimes use it to make fire, so they could cook. The Eritrean soldiers slaughtered more than 80 oxen in this town alone. They burned the seeds prepared for sowing or mixed it with other seeds or soil. They took as much as they could. Now, our people are starving. The people are in a difficult situation.
Humanitarian organizations says that if 282 trucks of food and non-food items are not able to reach Tigray on daily basis, a humanitarian catastrophe of unspeakable proportions is sure to unfold in Tigray.
The retreat of Ethiopian and Eritrean forces from most of Tigray on June 28, 2021, had caught the world by surprise. For months, the Ethiopian government had managed to shield the world from the realities of what was going on in Tigray, the atrocities as well as its military standing. What was perhaps predictable was that Ethiopian forces managed to commit atrocities as they were fleeing from the capital, brutally murdering 8 civilians in the outskirts of Meghallah. Sabla Warq Lama has more on this.
The war on Tigray has largely been marked by the degree of cruelty inflicted on innocent Tigrayan civilians. Media and human rights groups across the world have spoken up about the atrocities, but the world has yet to take a decisive action to bring those responsible to justice. Germanis Tsagay and Tourist Berha are residents of Manbar Qaddusan in Indarsa district, just in the outskirts of Meghallah. They say Ethiopian soldiers killed their husbands on June 28, 2021, as they were retreating from the capital.
They knocked on our doors while we were at home and ordered us to open. As we did so, they asked if we saw the junta. We told them that we hadn't. Then they asked if we were the junta. Then we told them that we were farmers. Then they asked us for money and our phones, and we told them that we didn't have any. Our neighbor Gabra Abraha was here with us when that happened. Then they took my husband outside and killed him there. Then they killed our neighbor in this room. My husband and I were worried when we heard gunshots. We were going into hiding, so he wanted to take the cattle with him. The war was coming so close, so we could hear more and more shots. Before my husband left the house, a soldier was yelling, "Open the door, open the door." We were scared, but opened the door anyways. The soldier came in right away and started to strangle my husband and said, "Are you the junta?" He then replied, "No, we're farmers." The soldier also said, "Where is the junta then?" And then we said that we didn't know. After that, he forced him out to the courtyard and asked for money and a mobile phone. My husband said that he didn't have money, but he gave him his phone. The soldier allowed him to get in. They made it seem like they were going to leave us be, but he shot him in the back as he was coming inside our home.
Girmanis Agay and Turas Barha are just one of the 8 households that lost their loved ones on June 28th. Earlier this year, the government of Tigray had announced the formation of task forces tasked with the responsibility of properly documenting crimes committed in Tigray.
Since November, civilians have been massacred, public and private properties looted, and women and girls sexually abused by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, while food has been used as a weapon of war, with farmers denied their right to plow their land and their livestock killed and food stocks destroyed. Our reporters were on the ground in Negash to see the impacts of the 8-month-long occupation and the almost 5-month-long siege. Haile Gabru has more on this.
Abiy Ahmed's government and his allies have been committing grave atrocities throughout Tigray. As part of their strategy of the man-made famine, they have burned cereals, mixed grains with flour and soils, and destroyed farming equipment, looted and vandalized foodstuffs and properties, snatched clothes and ornaments so that people would remain with nothing to sustain their lives. To make things worse, they have blocked all the life-saving humanitarian assistances from entering Tigray. As a result, people are suffering from hunger and dying from lack of food and medicines. Residents of Negash, a small town where the historic Al-Najasi Mosque is located, are dying due to hunger, of which some of them had a stay with Tigray television and stated their problem like this.
Hunger? I am speechless about that. We are experiencing a difficult time. We have nothing to eat. We try to sleep and wake up in a while. We cannot stand firm as our body loses its balance due to hunger. We cannot stand still as our body loses its balance due to hunger. You can't find any flour in our surroundings. Eating injera, the local family dish, is history today. Children are at the verge of death due to lack of food. Humanitarian aid is at tail due to the year-long blockade imposed by Abiy Ahmed's government in Tigray.
Everything has stopped due to the deeds of the invading forces in Tigray. I'm sick, but I couldn't get enough food and medical supplies to save my life. I was bedridden for a month and got better for a while. Then I got sick again. My body got wind due to lack of food. Mothers are weeping out when their children are screaming due to hunger. Both the Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have looted all what we had worth on our hand. It is so disturbing. We plead the international community to hear our troubled voices and act immediately.
They left us nothing. They are merciless. We have no words to describe the atrocities committed on us. Our properties are looted by the Ethiopian and Eritrean troops turn by turn. I have been given this apron from my brother-in-law. I am wearing this apron even at night, as my blankets are looted by the barbaric forces. I and my family members don't have anything to eat. The world should say Tigrayans' lives matters.
Helping each other is at the heart of the Tigrayan culture, but the siege has devastated everything and people can't even help themselves. Mr. Tsagai Woldu, administrator for the town of Negash, had a stay with Tigray television and expressed his frustration regarding the victims of the man-made famine.
Those who were helping others are now in a difficult condition for themselves, so it is very difficult to mobilize resources and reach out the people in need. Consequently, people who live in the town of Negash are suffering from a full-fledged hunger.
Mr. Solomon Hagos, administrator of the Kileta Blalo district, said that more than 60,000 people of the district couldn't get humanitarian aid so far due to the blockade imposed in Tigray, and people's lives are at risk.
Eating balanced diet at this time is luxury in our district. Thus people used to eat once a day in a previous months. But now it's difficult to eat any food even once. Adults and children are getting emancipated these days. Accordingly, many people are at the brink of death. According to the assessment conducted currently in our district, things will lead from crisis to the brink of collapse unless all the humanitarian corridors in Tigray are opened up as soon as possible. Nothing is more annoying than seeing people eating shrubs and the like famine foods which are too old to be eaten by people.
Tigray is currently sheltering over 2.2 million internally displaced persons, with over 1 million displaced from western Tigray, where Ethiopian forces led by Amhara militia are committing ethnic cleansing. Of the millions displaced, many are children suffering that have witnessed unspeakable horrors in the journey to Mekelle. Winta Kidana has more.
This is Fiori Fantahon from Maikadra in western Tigray. She was a grade 7 when education was discontinued in Tigray nearly 2 years ago due to the coronavirus outbreak. Fiori is one of many children forced to witness the Maikadra massacre. She says she had gone out to play with her friends but had to run and leave her village to save her life.
I saw so much cruelty. I saw people being killed and thrown into a river, especially Takaza and Shararo. I witnessed such brutal crimes. People would be murdered and left in the streets, the way they were massacred. It's so hard to say what I witnessed. This is all because of the Eritrean soldiers and Amhara Fano.
Fiori says she and her mother had left Maikadra together, but were soon separated in Shararo as Eritrean troops started to shell the city.
Me and my mom were separated in Shararo. The city was being shelled. Everyone started running to save their lives. That's when we lost each other. I was on the road and alone until I finally reached Mekelle and met with her here.
Fiori says her and her mother largely depend on Mekelle residents to provide them with basics such as food and clothes, but that since the siege started and all the basic services including banking were discontinued and all commercial goods and aid blocked from coming into Tigray, they too have found themselves in a difficult situation.
The residents of Mekelle were generous before Tigrayan forces arrived, but it's not as it used to be now. Now everyone's suffering. But we appreciate it even more because we understand it's difficult for them as well.
Fiori and her family are one of over 1 million people displaced from western Tigray due to the ethnic cleansing campaign by Amhara militia and Fano vigilantly groups. The almost 5 months long siege has worsened this already horrific humanitarian situation, with all humanitarian partners announcing that they have run out of food stocks and host communities finding themselves in a dire situation.
We're starving. We eat little bread once a day, if we're lucky. If not, that day will pass with no food. We get that from the residents of Mekelle.
That wraps up our news for the evening. Thank you for tuning in and good night.